joining us this morning. We are excited to have this conversation and have some time together this morning to give you some updates on the proposed building project and the results of the focus groups. I want to begin with a word of prayer as we begin today. So let's pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for your work and your spirit that moves among us and calls us to be the church together. Thank you for vision, for Zumbro and for our community, and ask that you are present with us as we discern together how it is you're calling us into the future. Bless this conversation, this ZED Talk today, and open our hearts and our minds to your work among us. In your name we pray. Amen. So we have a bunch of information. If you did not pick up the handouts on the table by the coffee and the donuts, Dave Kitteberg will walk around and make sure that you have them. We had lots of handouts. We want to make sure you have that in front of you, and so that we can follow along together. This process, you probably know, but it has been formulated by a lot of conversation within the congregation over the last 3 to 5 years, and has been shepherded most recently by the building leadership team. If you're part of the building leadership team, could you stand up just so that we can see who you are? If you're part of the building leadership team, we got Noel, we got Dan, all those people eating donuts back there don't count. Shelley Sperling and others, and Chris Gotti and Dave Kinneberg are co-chairs, and I'm serving as staff liaison. So as we have conversation today, and you have questions throughout the week or in the weeks to come, feel free to reach out to any of us as we make our steps forward. Just want to give you a brief kind of overview of where we've been and how we've gotten to this point thus far. In 2014, there was a broad study done of the congregational needs based on ministries and users and staffing and teams, and started to formulate some ideas about what we might need for our facilities for mission and ministry moving forward. After that assessment was done, some conversations were had. In the fall of 2016, we had a facilities discernment night and really honed in on some key factors, including accessibility and refreshing the sanctuary and thinking about hospitality space. All those things came up in those conversations in 2016. And since then, we've engaged with a design architect in 2017, Whitseth Smith Nolting, worked with us to develop a master plan, and that master plan was never designed to be the end-all, be-all, but certainly a path for us to look forward and have some concrete ideas of what it might look like for us to do some of the improvements to the building that the congregation had already discerned. And then over the next 6 or 9 months, we worked with that architecture firm, and last spring, if you remember, in February, March, April, we had some congregational conversations that lifted up all of the renderings of that master plan. And at that time, we heard from the congregation and we heard that there were lots of good things in there, and there were some questions that we had. At the same time, we realized that plan was so large that we would have to engage in probably selling or developing the north lot. And there were concerns about just how do we do that all at once. And as we got closer to some of those questions, we were looking at what does all of this building stuff have to do with our current mission and our mission going forward, especially given who we are and what DMC is doing at this time. And so we took a step back this last summer, and we did some mission discernment together and honed in on that. And now this building leadership team has been discerning based on the things that we've learned from this summer and this fall as a congregation, and now certainly because of the 200 plus people who participated in the focus groups last month, we have come to a place where we're ready to maybe take some steps forward. I'm going to give this over to Chris Gotti, who's going to facilitate much of the conversation, and will feel free to jump in where you need to be.
Thanks, Pastor Jason. I have no idea why we're projecting yellow, but hopefully we can figure that out. I just want to remind folks of who are the members of the building leadership team. Jason pointed to this. Some of these folks have been doing work for an extended period of time. I just want to acknowledge all of them and the work they're doing and thank them for the work they're doing. As we go through this process, both leading up to the annual meeting next week and throughout the journey we're on, I'd encourage you to reach out to members of the building leadership team. They've been active, engaged, and we've had beyond robust conversations. So please do engage them along the way. So why are we doing this and why are we considering this? And it really comes off some of the activities that Pastor Jason pointed to. And these are kind of the three cornerstones that are driving us. From the input the congregation has given us, really worship and relationships are central to the ministries that happen at Zumbro Lutheran. The other key driver of our discussions has been that several parts of our building, in reality, based on assessment of experts beyond those who have an eyeball, are discerning that many of those elements are beyond their usable life and are in need of repair and, frankly, need attention. And we also believe that we want to be very forward-looking in our thinking, that if we do good planning now, it provides opportunity for future ministry of our congregation. You heard this if you're a part of the focus groups, but what are the goals driving our project? We very much want our building to be welcoming and accessible for all. And welcoming means a variety of things to different people, and we'll talk through that more. And accessible means some things and different things to all people. We'll talk about that more. We want to build on the strengths of worship and purposeful relationships and provide space for those activities, especially on the main level of the building. It's critically important for us, too, that through this building project, we enhance our mission and ministry opportunities. We recognize that we're part of a neighborhood that's changing dramatically, and how can we use our building to better support that ministry and mission? And most importantly, how can we best be good stewards of God's gift? God's gifts. And that's part of, as we formulate a resolution to bring to the annual meeting, part of what we're going to be asking for is an additional period of planning to discern what's financially feasible for us, given what we've heard the congregation wants to do. I'll turn it over to Marnie. Marnie conducted focus groups. We're grateful for her work on that. She's going to summarize the key findings that we heard.
Can you hear me now? Yep. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marnie Gotti. If you weren't part of the focus groups that we held here last month, I facilitated those sessions. And I just want to walk through what our results were. We had terrific turnout. We had 190 come through the focus group sessions. We had 6 of those. And then we also opened up and asked for feedback from folks that weren't able to make any of those sessions. And so we heard from some additional folks, and it turned out to be over 200 people, and for that we're really grateful. So just to recap what the goals were for the focus groups, we wanted to make sure that we gathered input about how the building could better support the mission of our congregation and contribute to the worship experience here. We also wanted to look at assessing the appeal of what is good about our building, what do people already like about it, what do we need to maintain, and what elements would make it more welcoming and accessible to those that are already members here, but also prospective members. And we also wanted to take a look at how do our members prioritize the various building options that we presented. If you recall, we had 2. And then we also wanted to get a sense for what was the degree of enthusiasm to financially support efforts moving forward. So as I mentioned, we had over 200 in a variety of the focus groups throughout the week. Moving on to some of the key themes and takeaways. if you remember, option number 1, we called that essential maintenance, and that was really what we said was needed to help keep the building viable and vibrant. And what we saw was strong support for this option. And overall, members really understood that this was needed to keep our building going. Several thought that the all-level elevator that was actually a part of option 2 should be moved into option number 1. So it really emphasized the importance of accessibility. And we also had quite a bit of conversation around that elevator topic in that in option 1 it was to maintain and make repairs to our current elevator. And so we got lots of feedback from people saying, you know what, we really do need both. We're a big church. We've got a big facility. We've got needs that are critical for the current elevator in terms of our ministries around open table and to be able to bring food in for funeral receptions and things like that. But we also need that other all-level elevator in option 2. We also heard that many questioned the value and the need of a proposed wheelchair lift. And we also heard quite a lot about the kitchens and what upgrades are needed for those. And option number 2, we call that enhancing mission and worship. We also saw solid support for that option. It wasn't quite as strong as for option number 1. There were a lot of questions that members had about some of the items in option number 2. And if you remember, there were all sorts of enhancements to do with the sanctuary. So things like the hearing loop, possibly replacing the floor tile, things like that. We also had in option number 2 the fellowship lounge modifications, library modifications, replacing single pane windows, digital signage. The elevator and the digital signage are considered to be really important enhancements, but it came through loud and clear that we have to be really thoughtful in how those are executed if we go forward with those options. And members shared a wide range of opinions and suggestions about those sanctuary enhancements that I just outlined. And overall, the hearing loop had the most support in this category. Another takeaway was improving accessibility, and we heard that in every focus group session and on many of the feedback forms that were submitted. Members really emphasized that it's improving accessibility for everyone, so those that have physical limitations, those with young children, and also the elderly. And many suggestions were made about both the existing elevator, as I mentioned, and the proposed new one. We also heard good feedback about perspective and some of the less than optimal experiences that our members and visitors have had with the current ramp. And we also heard that the proposed wheelchair lift is really not considered a viable option. Another theme that we heard pretty consistently throughout all of the focus groups were that we needed to consider the other levels of our facility, so the lower 2 levels, as we look at enhancements. Many comments were brought up about the main kitchen appliances needing either significant repair or all-out replacement. We also heard that the sewing room has experienced some flooding issues, and that the Sunday school rooms in general are not very welcoming. They have a bit of a sterile feel. And finally, planning for the next generation. As you know, if you attended those focus groups, by and large, they were attended by older people in our congregation. But it was, I thought, quite heartwarming to hear many of our members say, you know what, we may not be here to reap the benefits of all of this, but we want to make sure that you plan it for that future generation and make sure that it meets their ministry needs. And so as the plans evolved, I recommended to the building leadership team that we continue to try and bring in input from younger folks in the congregation in addition to the older folks.
Yeah.
Some of the key things were that people are overwhelmingly affirming that our location in the downtown area matters to who we are as a congregation. Our visibility, the proximity to all the green space around us was mentioned. The central location that we have is important for our community. And maintaining the integrity and the infrastructure of our building is a really high priority for our members. Also, there was strong support for improving accessibility for those with mobility challenges, parents with small children, and the hearing impaired. Several people expressed concern about the look and the feel of the rooms on those lower 2 levels, as I mentioned. As you've probably heard or read in some of the communications already out, there is planning already being done to address some of those. And participants also emphasized, as I mentioned, that the renovation should be done in consultation with the younger generation.
Thanks, Marnie. So what did we do with that information? As a building leadership team, we met on 2 occasions, 2 weeks ago and then again Thursday night. And what we've done is honed a package that we're going to bring forward, what we're calling at this point the building project. The next step in this process is to bring a resolution to the annual meeting of the congregation, asking for the congregation's approval to plan, and we'll get more into that. What we're going to do now is just take a few minutes, and also on your sheets, this 4-page overview sheet, is a list of what's within the project plan at the present time. And they're organized around 5 main things: infrastructure, accessibility, worship, hospitality, and mission. And I'm going to ask for Pastor Jason and Dave to join and to help explain kind of some of how we got to this point in terms of what we're putting in the project plan at the present moment. The important point to make on this is these are estimates, not bids. Part of the approval to plan would be to move from construction estimate to construction bid, so that the number would be honed. The other critical point to make is that between now and the time to move this to action, we would do an exhaustive feasibility study to determine how this project would be financed. What's the fundraising capability of the congregation to support it? And what financing would be required in order to make it happen, and what level of financing would be required balanced with the fundraising to ensure that our ministry, our staffing is not compromised. So in essence, what we're doing is bringing forward now a more solidified package that we would go into deeper planning before it was approved to go.
Can I just add too that in that deeper planning, are opportunities for us to bring in lots of other people within the congregation who have vested interests. For example, kitchen repairs, the library. How does that look? The worship space. We're going to have a conversation with the worship team on Thursday and invite them into that process, so that none of this is kind of created from on high, but it's participatory. This is us doing this work together.
Thanks, Jason. Relative to infrastructure, just a point to make, and the assessments made is that our roof, the lifespan of our roof cannot be extended beyond a period of time, and it needs to be repaired. There was some conversation about putting skylights in. We as a building team at the present time are not recommending that. Instead, what we're asking for within the worship space is significantly enhanced lighting. Think about St. John's and the lighting at St. John's, which is very bright. We believe actually the better option is to enhance the lighting significantly.
Do you want to go through this, or do you want
Yep, if we could.
Well, sure. The pastor hands you the mic, you don't turn it down, I guess. One other just quick note too is that as these are all listed up here, these are all individualized currently, and some of them may coexist if they're to happen. So there is a potential for costs to come down on some of them, depending on when we do them and which ones we do together, etc. So for this red portion on your sheet, for labeled infrastructure, what we're seeing is the re-roofing. So the existing roof is in need of replacement. And we discussed the single pane windows. Most of these are on the north, south, and the east sides, and they're original to our building in 1969.
So an example is literally right here.
Yeah, these windows would be a great example of that. And with this single pane windows, obviously energy efficiency becomes a huge question, as well as being able to control those climates in those areas. So that's the library area, the fireside room, and the office areas of the building. Our HVAC has been a big topic for us. This has been a multi-stage process, and currently we've been speaking with several contractors, one being Valor, which currently maintains our facility for us and has been working on a bid for many, many years. I think it's worth noting that this number it's obviously a big number in our project proposal. So the interesting piece of it is, as the building has aged, we have had numerous plans come and go with the addition on the west side of the building, and certain things were not done the way they need to be done today in order to manage and have an efficient building. One thing we learned this last week about the HVAC system is our lower two levels are actually pretty efficient. It's our main level that's the big problem, and we have to make a lot of modifications to certain things. So there'll be a lot more information coming up about that. And then last but not least on this one, replacing some of our deteriorating exterior fascia. And if you haven't noticed that, we have some water damage that's causing some of our concrete structure on the exterior to deteriorate.
And one of the things we talked about for that particular item, that actually may be an opportunity for us to think about better curb appeal, and we would work that into the process once it's actually designed. The second kind of set of things are really around accessibility. One is a one-level parking lot and reducing the curbs that are in that just for safety, and candidly the parking lot itself is in need of complete repair just for safety reasons. We are talking about and proposing that we renovate the current elevator for its use for utility in response to the feedback around needing to support the mission, especially of open table and some of those things. It would still be available, especially for utility purposes. And we are proposing, you'll see in a few minutes, what the look and feel would be for an elevator at the front of the church. And that would be an all-level elevator, including it would come in at ground level and be able to go up to sanctuary level at the front of the church, and would be a large elevator so that it could accommodate tables and larger things, including some express the need for it to accommodate a gurney, and it would do that as well. And then we are proposing a hearing loop. That's part of accessibility for folks relative to a hearing loop within the sanctuary, and some of the sanctuary enhancements would bring that price down.
Right.
Jason?
Yeah, we'll be able to test what a hearing loop is like in this room probably in the next week or two. One has been installed, it just needs to be hooked up. So we'll have a chance to test that out. But with the hearing loop, this price is with resurfacing the flooring in the sanctuary. They can go in and put it in the grout, but there are considerable labor costs affiliated with that. That price goes up about $50,000 to put it in the existing floor. So this is the price with new flooring in the sanctuary that mitigates a lot of dust and possible pollution of the organ if you're dragging all that grout out, and also just allows for us to improve the look of the sanctuary as well.
Dave, anything on this one?
The only thing I was going to add regarding the top one there at the parking lot, if you're wondering why a curbless parking lot, we got a lot of feedback in our focus groups about how tough it is for certain people to come off of vehicles or buses and step down onto the parking lot and then step up onto a curb, and the ability to even pull up closer to the front entrance would be desirable.
And I know you'll have questions, but we're just going to plow through these just because we got a lot of information. In terms of worship, this is the bulk of the activity outside of the HVAC. We mentioned in the focus groups, the pipe organ, some aspects have not actually been updated since the time it was installed and or cleaned. We view that as a central asset, jewel of the congregation that we want to be sustained. This issue of light in the sanctuary, how do we enhance that? It was felt that we want better lighting in the sanctuary, but we also don't want to compromise the sense for all glass and all you see is people walking in all aspects of the church during worship. So what we're proposing, and you'll see this in just a few minutes, is glass near the entrance to the sanctuary, basically taking the doors and between the pillars and making it glass, but sustaining the walls on the rest. And we already discussed this, but really enhancing lighting. I was thinking about that sitting in church this morning, like, oh my gosh, it feels a little dark in here. And it would really enhance the lighting and permit us to do more things in the space. Anything on that, Dave, Jason?
No.
So one of the big aspects of this that we've been thinking more about is significantly enhancing our ability to have greater flexibility within the sanctuary itself, including replacing the chancel itself, creating a movable chancel that would appear and truly be, have a solid feel to it, but also replacing both the pews and chancel furniture. One of the things we talked about as a building leadership team is this building was built with a specific architectural intent and heritage. We do not want to compromise that, but we want to bring that to a more contemporary look and feel. One of the things Teresa talked about at our meeting this week is literally bringing a liturgical architect into the conversation. How do we honor the tradition, but have it be recognized in a more contemporary way that matches expectations of people in this era? And we would move in that direction. The final thing would be actually replacing sanctuary and chapel tile. A complete new, brighter look and feel, and also permit us to recognize weather conditions. Jason, on this?
I think just to add, these are elements that we have some estimates for, but we're working on design, and we'll bring people into that conversation to continue that. And I just want to reiterate what Chris says. I think that was really clear in the focus groups that there is a deep care for the architectural heritage of this place, and so we're not going to put big oak curved pews in or anything, but something that's going to honor that same tradition, simple lines, things like that we want to look at.
Hospitality. One of the opportunities we have, especially in bringing an elevator to the front of the church, is to think about the library location. We would actually move the library to at least a concept would be to have the core of the library located where the coat closet is, and for the winter months in some of these open spaces actually have space for coats, but also permit the library to be more broadly distributed in some of those open spaces. So we'd have more seating areas. One of the things that we heard in the focus groups is people want kind of space to get away, but also space for conversation. So again, that's the concept behind that. Also removing the lounge wall that is permanent, but also sustaining within that concept the ability to break it down into smaller space. So movable walls that would be open, and then enhancing, and we heard a strong affirmation of this, not only exterior signage that has some pop to it, but also interior that is more contemporary. Anything on that one, Jason?
No, but did anyone see the digital signs when you came in this morning? Yes? Okay. No one has attacked me yet, so we're doing good. That's good.
The final piece of this is, as part of a capital appeal, we would also build in 10%, as Jason, I would ask you to talk to this.
Yeah, this is very common for churches who are doing capital appeals like this, capital campaigns that are going to significantly increase or improve the facility that we're working with, but also we're a church and we're God's people and we're called to serve others. And so we would want to work in a mission component to this where we would say we're going to tithe 10% of our capital appeal to ministry beyond our walls. And we'd work with mission and outreach team and council and others, maybe our mission partners, our primary mission partners, to figure out what kind of project we could do together that would make a significant impact over the next 3 to 5 years, let's say, and that will enhance our ministry and our mission going forward as well. So something that ties into this project, but also ties us to the community.
So the budget estimate, keyword estimate, at this point is $3.6 million. One of the things we want to be cognizant of is where does that place us relative to other congregations doing other types of similar activity. We are not out of the ballpark. This would be a stretch, but we believe it is feasible. What we need to test is that feasibility through use of Tom Jolivet. As part of the process we would go through, what we're proposing is a vote for approval of the plan next Sunday, and then returning on May 4th for an approval. Between February 10th and May 4th, feasibility would be conducted. These estimates would be further refined. We'd know a specific number. We'd have a sense for the fundraising capability and the financing package and what the implications would be. And during that entire time, engaging work groups through the process. Just specific detail of what this might look like. Again, just please, these are concept drawings, okay?
Concept drawings. Repeat after us, concept drawings.
Simply intended to give you a sense for place and how things might work out. But we would have glass at the back near the opening. And the part of the rationale, at least at this stage, is to, as you enter the church, the centrality of worship to our experience. This is some of what the front might look like, and I know this is hard to see, but this is actually where the elevator would be located, and it would permit, again, that up to the sanctuary level, ease of access right at the front of the church. This would go down to all 3 levels. Many said, just get rid of these steps.
We'd love to.
The implications of that are massive, and candidly, probably would not be able to be accomplished until we did a master plan, a much more significant. And our thinking is, build in some of these assets now if we go to a master plan, but no, we want these assets we build in to be viable in a master plan, and we believe an elevator would. Joe?
And with the master plan, like this elevator, if we did go up to a chapel up top, the footprint is so that you could expand that further.
Right, so Joe's point is if this elevator, if we did master plan, could go up to another level, which was in the master plan originally. Again, concept drawings, but opening up the space where the library is located, much more light coming in. And this is what the lounge would appear, movable walls. This would be retractable as well. Additional things we're paying attention to, and we're accomplishing this through a variety of things, and I'd ask Pastor Jason to speak to it. We heard loud and clear in the focus groups around the appliances in the main kitchen, look and feel on the lower levels, as Marty mentioned, and brighter wall colors on those lower 2 levels. Specifically, we tested the idea of, is there interest around solar panels? There was interest, but I would not say a strong interest in it, but we do think it merits exploration of what might it entail, how might it be implemented, and how might it permit us to reduce our overall load on the power grid, and can it actually go onto the power grid? So something that we believe merits study. The north lot, huge opportunity for the congregation in a dynamically changing neighborhood. We are, again, not proposing anything relative to the north lot at the present moment, but we do believe there's merit this year for a team of people to sit down, formulate some recommendations about how the north lot could be used as an asset to sustain the mission of the congregation, to thrive into the future, and permit us long-term not only be strong, but also bring additional potential building enhancements. And the final piece is relative to a reserve fund. And I would ask for input, especially from Joe, who brought forward this great idea. It's a great idea. It's not new, but it's a great idea we just haven't ever done. we're in a spot as a congregation where there's basic maintenance that we haven't actually done, mostly because we didn't want to maybe do a capital campaign. Could we put in place a reserve fund on an ongoing basis that would permit us to do that and not saddle future generations around capital campaigns? What would be required for that? We believe all of this, especially the top three, can and already are being done. The other projects are things that merit study and a recommendation. Jason?
Yeah, just to be give a little more detail on those top three things. Already, we've replaced the refrigerator in the main kitchen. We've had a couple of issues in just the last few months where we lost some of the food that was there for open table. I think the fridge went down during Lefse week. It was a big deal. I mean, it caused a lot of mayhem and panic, and so we have replaced that fridge because of your generosity in 2018. There was an abundance at the end of the year, and we were able to use a portion of our reserves from the end of the year to purchase a new fridge. We also worked in, because of the 2019 stewardship campaign of Finding God in the Midst of the City. Part of the increase that you helped provide is dedicated to addressing some fairly easy, low-hanging fruit pieces of aesthetics in our space. So some of that paint and maybe some fresh furniture, some different design and just decor could help us freshen up some of these spaces with existing monies.
So where do we go from here? Next Sunday, we're going to bring to the annual meeting a proposed resolution to proceed with formal planning of a building project. And key point, the resolution is for approval to plan, not to act. That may frustrate some people. We've been planning literally in some parts of this since 2014, but we believe this is the right step to take to spend essentially three months to determine the exact price, what do we get, and can we do it, in essence. So in that period of time, a fundraising feasibility study, engaging Tom Jolivet. Those funds are already allocated, so it's not allocating new funds to do that study, both for that and the construction component. But what's the capacity for paying for these renovations? What's a financing plan through local financial institutions and the ELCA Mission Investment Fund? And further refine the cost estimates, both with the architects and the contractors. You see a timeline here of activity, what would occur from Feb 10 to early May. We've mentioned most of this. Important point, what's the impact on long-term mission staffing and ministry? What is that mission project as part of the capital campaign appeal? Refine the concept drawings in terms of actual renderings. Develop a case statement and communicate through this process. What are other work groups for those other projects? Who would lead the capital appeal team? That would be a separate group from the building leadership team. And then on May 4th, we'd reconvene before everyone scatters for the summer and determine, are we going to go? Are we a go as a congregation? So it'll be a vote to approve what's the final elements and the cost, and what is the financing plan. Jim.
So just the solar panels seem like an afterthought, quite frankly, in your presentation. Just to address one issue, can it be incorporated in the power grid unless this kind of space is different than a residential? The answer is absolutely yes. Yeah.
I would just offer, Jim, it was not an afterthought. It may have come off like that. If it did, I apologize. It was very much part of our conversations. We believe we need more information, and we don't have it at the present time. Catherine?
You might be aware RPU is giving a workshop on solar energy on Saturday, February 23rd. I believe it's at Northrop.
Okay.
Might be something.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It wasn't quite clear to me, is that $3.6 million estimate include the 10% fund?
So because we don't know what the final number is, and let me just say a little bit more about that estimate too. There are 13% that's worked as contingency into that, so that number almost inflates the project by about 13%. And because we just don't know how much savings or how much other things are going to cost, we framed it as a 10% rather than add it on top, because it may not be another $300,000 on top of that. It might already be part of that, but it is not worked into that estimate.
But it would be into a
But it
final
would be
number.
into the number that, yeah, is planned for at the end.
Leah?
So regarding accessibility, you've addressed some ways to comfortably get people into our sanctuary. Did the team discuss family restroom?
The question is, has the team addressed the question of a family restroom on the main level? And the answer is no, but there is time for us to consider that. That's a good thing for us to consider. Matt?
Does the elevator that you're proposing, does it also go up to the balcony at the organ level?
The question is, does the elevator in the front of the building go up to the balcony level? Currently, it would not, but it would be designed so that if we take that next step down the road somewhere and we build up and build out, then it would have the capacity to go up. But at this point, it would not. Some of the questions that regarding accessibility in music, we've had some initial conversations with music staff, and again, this is part of the worship conversation too, is are there other ways that we can make music participation more accessible by eliminating using the balcony all the time? So can we, as we reconceive of the space of the sanctuary, can we provide better space for musicians in other parts of the sanctuary? It's a question. Don't have any answers yet, but Bob and Christy have been part of that conversation and have been supportive of at least exploring those options.
Paul?
Chris, thanks to the committee for all the hard work. Getting feedback from 200 members is not easy, so greatly appreciated. I do want to ask if maybe a suggestion for during the planning process, could we look at, with everything that's happening around the church, the physical church, with DMC, with everything else, what do we look like in 2025? What do we look like in 2030? How will this beautiful new space allow us to do more of what we're currently doing, or maybe even better yet, something different, so that we truly are living up to our mission statement?
Thanks, Paul. And I would offer we're very much in that space. I think we're also being realistic about what we can accomplish at this stage. I think there has to be a future planning phase that occurs that matches that next phase, which is what aspects of what the master plan were. I actually think the north lot planning process would permit us to do a lot of that as well. Meredith?
That was my question. Is there any discussion yet on what the north lot could do for us, or does it bring in money now?
So I think there's a range of options we've discussed as a building leadership team. Some believe just sell it and take the money and go. Others believe, should we find some sort of pathway to sustain and strengthen the mission through partnership with outside organizations? What might that look like? Could it be colleges or those types of things? How do we build in that the mission of our congregation around intergenerational? What might it look like? There are plenty of interested developers, but what do we want to accomplish as a congregation? In the same way we did visioning as a congregation and the mission, the MAP project, we need a mini of that relative to the North Lot, so that we have the congregation with us, but we have a goal in mind.
And I also think that's part of being good stewards of the resources and the gifts we have. We have some tremendous resources that I think God calls us to make good on in this community, and we have lots of ways to do that, and it'd be better for us to find the right partners and then find a developer who wants to work with us on that vision, than rather turning it over to a developer and saying, yeah, do with it whatever you want, right?
Rich?
I heard her also ask, does it bring in money now? It does.
Yes, it would.
No, it currently does.
Oh, it does, yes. There is revenue on it now as a parking lot, but it would significantly increase.
I think we have time for one more. Thank you folks for your attention and interest. If you have questions, please, again, the members of the building leadership team are ready for your questions and input. We welcome that. We want this to be a transparent, open process that we move to as a congregation. Thank you.